Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I've got a little bit of an easy project, I hope. It's a 2006 Squier Affinity Stratocaster, or I guess technically called a Strat. And it's got an issue that I haven't seen come up too often, but I think it's one that might help some people out, so we're going to cover it today. Let me flip this one over and show you what I'm talking about. Now if you took one look at this thing and said, hey, the back plate's on upside down, you're right, but I didn't do that. That was the previous owner, and that's not actually the problem. So already when we open this up, you can tell something's not right here. There's some duct tape in the back and we can't really figure out what it's covering up. Okay, so what we've got here is a claw that is drastically skewed, and I think I know the reason why. Yeah, just as suspected, the screw that is not screwed in is stripped and it's not really going anywhere, so we're going to have to repair that screw hole in the body. It's not the simplest task, but it's not difficult either. So I think we'll be able to make quick work of this one. To really do it right and make sure I don't end up with a mess inside the cavity of the guitar here, I'm going to go ahead and take the pick guard off, which means I'm going to have to take the neck and the strings off. I don't have to take the neck off, but that's one way to preserve the strings. Anyway, let's take that step next. I'm going to put a capo on the first fret, loosen the strings, take the neck off, then we'll work on the pick guard. All right, let's see if there's any evidence of damage in this pickguard cavity already. Indeed there is. There is a piece of chipped wood where I can see the screw coming through the front. I believe that might be the one that's screwed in too far right now. No, it's actually the stripped one. Okay, well at any rate, the repair is not going to be completely invisible. There will be some evidence of it here in the cavity, but that's not really that big a deal. All right, without the strings in play, we can actually loosen up this claw and go ahead and take these springs off. All right, well, a couple of issues. Obviously, we've got the stripped hole here on the left side of the guitar, but we also have a stripped screw. I had a lot of trouble getting this other claw screw out because somebody screwed it in there so tight, and I think they were having trouble getting it screwed in, and they stripped out the head on the screw. So we're going to have to replace these two screws. Now if you don't have tremolo screws for this, neck screws work really well as well. So I'm going to see what I've got in my spare parts bin. All right, I found a couple of neck screws in the parts bin and they're going to work very well for this. So I'll just set those aside for the moment. Now one thing that I need to do is figure out a strategy on how I'm going to repair this. Now there's a couple of ways that you can actually do this repair. Number one, I found a couple of larger diameter screws in my parts bin. I could have made those work. Even if I had to drill larger holes in this little claw bracket, it would have worked out. I didn't want to go that route because it's the easy way out, and I wanted to show you a little bit more complicated repair. Although really and truly, it's not that complicated. And before I tell you what that is, I'll mention one other easy fix, which would be to move the holes in this body either left or right and try to catch some new wood in the process. There's not a lot of room in here for me to move that left or right, and if I do that, I'm worried that the claw is going to catch on one of the sides, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do the real repair, which is I'm going to drill these out to a 1/4 inch size. We're going to put a dowel rod in there, glue it in place, and then we're going to have a brand new wood surface to drill new holes into, and that'll be my permanent fix. Now I'm not sure if I've shown it before, but I have a pretty cool little right angle tool that I can use to get into tight spots like this. It's not what I'm going to use today. Today I'm going to use a really long 1/4 inch drill bit that I sometimes use to run wiring holes in bodies like Telecasters and things like that. Let me show you that bit. So here's that bit. It's about 18 inches long, I believe. We don't need to drill that far, but the reason that I want to use a really long bit is it lets me get the shallowest possible angle in this cavity. All right, the last thing I want to check before I actually drill this, I want to see what the angle of the original holes is. So I've got this little stick. So it looks like they come in and they are going to clear the back of this cavity. They'll clear the original tremolo and everything. So I'll just come in at that same angle, just like that. I keep getting spooked that I'm about to hit something in here, and so what I'm going to do is finish this drilling with the body standing upright and the pick guard laying away from it. All right, that looks like what I would have expected, so I can continue. Okay, I've got both holes drilled now, and I decided it really wasn't worth struggling with the pick guard and some of the other things in place, so I went ahead and took all the hardware off. It was only 6 screws to take the tremolo out, and a couple of screws to take the jack plate off, and 2 wires to desolder here, and 1 wire on the tremolo claw, and that was all it took, so maybe 5 minutes tops. At any rate, now I can show you the progress a little bit better. So here you can see where the drill bit came through, and you can see the angle. So this is where the dowels will stick through into the main cavity, and I can clean up that later with a chisel or something like that. You could even use a router, but at any rate, this is where you will see the repair on this side, and we can cover it up as best we can with some shielding paint. All right, so what we're going to use to repair these 2 holes in the body is a set of 1/4-inch dowel rods. And in this case, I'm going to use oak dowel rods just because they're a little bit stronger and I happen to have them. You could easily use poplar or something like that. I'd probably shy away from pine, but you can use it in a pinch. I measured these out before I drilled, and they are about 5 thousandths bigger than the drill bit, so I think they're going to fit fine. I need to roll them in glue, then we'll put them in place and let them dry. I'm also going to use a stick to get some glue up into the holes on the body just to make sure I get good coverage, and of course I've got a little piece of cardboard here to catch any glue drippings. Okay, I've got my dowel rods tapped in now. They do protrude into the cavity of the pickup, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a half. I can't do any cleanup right now. I've got to wait till these dry. Okay, well, it's a new day, and I've gone ahead and I've cut off the dowel rods with a chisel and, basically got them flush with the back of the pocket here. I also did some cleanup work on the inside here that you can't really see that well, but at any rate, it's time to re-drill the holes for these. So I'm just going to use a long drill bit again, not as long as the other one that I had, but it'll do. And I'm going to drill a pilot hole for each one of the screws on this side. I've got my drill bit marked off that I'm going to stop at about 1 inch deep. And I'm going to use another drill bit to basically act like a center punch so I can get a good start on the right location for each one of these holes. All right, next we're going to reinstall the screws and the bracket. And remember, these are actually new screws. All right, with the bracket back in place, we're going to flip this thing over. I'm going to reinstall the tremolo because I took it out, and then we'll put the springs back on. All right, so here we are with the tremolo reinstalled and the springs reinstalled. You don't want to screw this claw all the way to the back of the cavity. That's going to be way too tight. You want to leave yourself a gap. The gap's usually around 1/2 inch or so. Could be a little more, could be a little less. It depends on your strings and your string tension and your tuning and all kinds of stuff. I've got a video on leveling a Floyd Rose that kind of explains that concept for tremolos in general, so you may want to go check that out. Now we don't want to put the back plate on just yet because we've got to do a lot of that adjustment later. So we're going to flip things over and reinstall the neck. Now everything's been holding fine, but there's no string tension on it yet, so now we need to tune. And before I tune, I need to throw back on this jack plate and jack. So let me do that off camera and then we'll get to tuning. Okay, so I've got the jack reinstalled, everything's working, and I went ahead and tuned it up, and what you'll notice is that after tuning it, the tremolo has not risen off the body at all. And I like to see probably a 1/16 or so gap there, a couple millimeters maybe, in the back of the tremolo as opposed to the front, so it's not completely flat against the body. Some people like it that way, flat against the body, because it helps stabilize the tuning and keeps you from changing the tuning if you put your palm on the tremolo. But I like it to float just a little bit. So we're going to back off the tension on the screws on the claw and let the springs and stuff move out a little bit. It's floating just a little bit now, but I'm going to go ahead and give it another 1/4 turn. Let's see what happens after we tune that. I'm going to turn the Peterson on. It's a little loud, so I'll probably fast forward through this. Well, we're in tune, and we're still a little low, in my opinion, so I'm going to go ahead and back it off just a little bit more. All right, well there we are. So I've tuned it up a little bit. I've adjusted the screws a little bit and then back and forth, and so I finally got things where I want them. It doesn't take too long, and I would say at this point the claw is probably 3/4 of an inch, maybe 2 centimeters or so from the back of the body. And at this point, if I was happy with my strings, and I actually am, I could put the back cover back on and we'd be all done. Okay, well, I've got a few things left to do to tidy things up. I've got to put the rest of the pickguard screws in. I'm going to check out the pots and stuff to see if they need cleaning first. But anyway, that's all a project for another day. I thank you all again for hanging out with me on this episode. I appreciate all the likes and the comments. I really thank you all subscribers. Be sure to check out my description for links to parts in the episode. There probably aren't going to be a lot of parts for this one, but if you use any of my links on Amazon, they do help out the channel a little bit, so be sure to check those out. And it doesn't really matter if you're buying the stuff that I've linked or anything on Amazon. As long as you use my links, it doesn't cost you anything and it does help me. Anyway, thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.